Alright, welcome back. So with our submenu done, now we need to set up the links and routes so we can determine what goes into the main content area. So in this white area underneath the subheader, we want to display, based on the route, we want to display either this view or we want to display this view under the research tab. So let's go ahead and set up the routes so we can display different components based on the routing. So if we head to our editor and we're in the stock view, underneath the subheader, let's go ahead and add a div with a class name of styles container or content. And inside of here, we want to add our routes. So let's go ahead and go up to our imports and import route from React Router DOM. And then underneath there, we can create a route with a path of root. And then we'll add an empty component and we'll add another route with the path of research, and we'll add another component. And let's go ahead and just create two components so that we can get this working. So we'll create a dividends component here, and this is just for now. We'll remove this later, but we just want to make sure that this is working. And we'll create a research component and we'll return research. So let's go ahead and plug those in. And now we have a problem because we are not correctly linking these inside of our stock menu. So let's go to our stock view menu, and here we can see we're just linking to the root/dividends and root/research, and that won't work because that takes what we have built up already and it just removes it. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to say that once we get here, we want to add to this path instead of replacing it. So in order to do that, we need to grab a hook from the React Router DOM, and that's called useRouteMatch. So that'll give us a match object, and on the match object there's a property called URL that we can use in order to build up our link paths. So let's go ahead and say in the first one here, dividends, we want that to be the first view that the user comes to when they click into a stock. So that means that we can just put in the match URL here, and that'll be the root relative to where we are. So when we come here, this is the root, then we want to show the dividends view. And then down here, we want to do match.url, and then we're going to add to that, and we're going to add research. Alright, so here we're building up the URL and then we're adding research. So if we go back to our browser and we go back and forth, now you can see that in the browser tab here, we are getting the correct results. Now we're not switching views down here, so we need to actually do the same with our routes. So if we go back to the stock view, then let's go ahead and import the useRouteMatch here as well, and we'll say match equals useRouteMatch, and we'll grab that object and we will build up these paths. down here. So we'll say if the exact path is match.url, then we want to display the dividends, and otherwise we want to display the research if the path is match.url/research. And now if we go back, we see that in the left hand side you can see the text changing from dividend to research when we click these different tabs. Alright, so now we have the ability to swap out the content here whenever we change to a different URL. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stock view menu, and we'll add a border here that is going to change based on the URL that we're at. So we'll go back to our editor and we'll go to the stock view menu, and inside of here we'll add a div with a class name of styles border. And this is going to have a default placement of being underneath the dividend. So if we look at the menu here, there's a white border, and we want it to be able to change back and forth based on the URL that we're at. So let's go ahead and implement that. So the default placement, let's go ahead and implement that first. So we'll add a CSS class here for border, and it's going to have a width of 77 pixels, background color white, and we'll say height is 2 pixels, and we're going to say that the position is absolute, and the bottom property is 0. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Alright, that's not too bad, but we want to change the positioning a little bit. So let's go ahead and inspect the elements, and we'll add a transform translate x property, and let's make sure we don't lose it, and we'll go ahead and we'll increment this a little bit to something like that, and we'll copy that over. And we also want to give it a transition of translate, and we're gonna do 0.4 seconds and ease. And now what's gonna happen is we're gonna go to stock view menu, and we're gonna create a new class, and we're gonna add it to the border div if the route matches the research route. So in order to do that, let's first create the class that we are going to add, and the class is going to be border research. And what we want to do is we want to transform and translate x, and we want to maybe do 100 pixels. Let's go ahead and see in the browser. So let's go ahead and see what 100 pixels looks like, and it's too little, so let's go ahead and just add 135. So we're going to say translate x 135 pixels. And now let's go ahead and import our class names utility, and we're going to use that to apply a class to the border elements if the route is on /research. So let's go ahead and say const classes equals class names, and then styles dot border. So that's the default class. So we're always going to apply this class. And inside of this object, we'll put the condition. So if the condition is true, then we want to show the styles dot border research class. And we need to create a condition that we're going to show here. So basically, let's say const on research page equals true. And we'll put that here. And then we'll take this object and we'll put it in place of the styles.border. So if we go ahead and go back to our browser, we now see that we are on the border is on the research tab all the time. And that's because we set this to true. If we swap it to false, then it's going to go back to the dividends tab. So let's go ahead and create our condition. And to do that, we need to grab another hook from the React Router package called useLocation. And we'll say location equals useLocation. And what we want to do is we want to grab the path name. If we log out what's in location, we want to grab the path name, and we want to check if the last element of the path name is research. So let's go ahead and do URL elements equals location.split, and we'll split it on a slash. And then we'll say last element equals URL elements, and then URL elements dot length -1. And we'll say on research page, if the last element equals research, then we know that we're on the research page. Alright, so let's take a look at our app crashing spectacularly. And of course, we need to specify that we're splitting on the path name. So put in path name here, and location path name split, and that should be it. So now we're swapping between them, but it looks like our class transition transform. All right, so now we should get a smooth transition between these two links. All right, awesome. Now in the next video, we'll get started on building out the content area here and get started on these elements that we have in the dividends part. All right, thanks a lot for tuning in, and I'll see you there.